All right, so let's dive into something that I think we all really need to be thinking about a lot more these days, and that is financial resilience.
Cool.
Especially with all this wild weather that we've been seeing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
To help us unpack all this, we've got some pretty fascinating research actually from the cooperators,
Yeah.
and then also we're going to be taking a look at Good Rates Insurance and their home offerings too.
It's interesting because, it's not just about money.
Right.
It's about that sense of security of knowing you're prepared and ready for, whatever life throws your way, at least financially speaking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So this deep dive is really all about, how are Canadians dealing with these increasing risks that we are all facing, and how does insurance fit into all of that?
Absolutely. We're going to explore how insurance can actually help boost your overall financial well-being.
Right.
And, maybe this will even get you thinking about whether you have the right coverage for your needs.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into it. Yeah, let's do it.
So the cooperators did this big study of 5,000 Canadians.
Okay.
And get this. 1 in 5 households in Canada have already been impacted by some kind of extreme weather event in recent years.
What?
We're talking about floods, fires, heat waves, you name it.
Yeah, and that's actually precisely where this idea of financial resilience becomes so important.
Right.
The study looked at all sorts of factors, like how much debt people have,
Yeah.
their emergency savings, even things like their support networks.
Hmm.
It's really all about your ability to bounce back financially after something unexpected happens.
Okay, so how do we do? How do Canadians do on that financial resilience scale?
Right.
The study gave us an average score of 52.23 out of 100.
Okay.
Is that good?
Honestly, not really. It's actually a little bit concerning. Ideally, you'd want to see that number much higher.
Yeah.
What this is telling us is that a lot of Canadians just aren't really all that prepared for a major financial hit.
Right.
So let's say a tree falls on your house.
Or, your basement floods. Would you be able to cover those costs without falling into serious debt?
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And it really makes you realize how vulnerable we all are.
Yeah.
But this is where things get really interesting to me, at least.
Okay.
The study also found that even though more and more Canadians are dealing with all these crazy weather events, the number of people who feel confident in their insurance coverage is actually going down.
That's interesting.
It almost seems like a contradiction, doesn't it?
It really does. It
Yeah.
really highlights this growing insurance gap that we're seeing.
Right.
And, there are probably a few reasons for this. I mean, for one thing, insurance can be really expensive.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
And with the cost of just about everything going up these days,
Yeah.
it's understandable that people are having to make tough choices about where their money goes.
Right. And it also makes me wonder if people are really clear on what their insurance actually covers.
Oh.
Do they actually know what types of damage are covered for different events like floods or wildfires?
That's such an important point. It's not enough to just have any insurance.
Right.
You need the right kind of insurance for the specific risks that you face.
Right.
And that's where I think the insurance industry has a real responsibility to step up and, do a better job of educating people.
You're so right.
Yeah.
It shouldn't feel like you need a PhD in insurance just to understand your own policy.
Right.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
There was actually one really encouraging trend that came out of this study.
Okay, what's that?
A lot more Canadians bought insurance for catastrophic events last year.
Oh, interesting.
It jumped from 12.2% of households to 15.2%.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big increase.
That is a pretty big jump.
Yeah, it is.
When you think about what happened back in the summer of 2024, it kind of makes sense though, right? All those massive disasters that happened in Ontario and Quebec and Alberta. Remember, those caused a record-setting $8.5 billion in insured damages.
Oh, wow.
I think people are finally starting to connect the dots between extreme weather and really needing specific protection.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like a big wake-up call for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
And it really highlights how important it is to understand what your insurance actually covers.
Yeah.
Because flood insurance, it's not the same as fire insurance.
Nope.
And so on and so forth.
Exactly. You need to know exactly what you're covered for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You really do.
It comes down to, taking the time to assess your own personal risks.
Yeah.
And then you can make informed decisions about your coverage,
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what your current policy actually does and doesn't cover.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny, we often think about insurance as just this thing we have to have.
Yeah.
But we don't really stop to think about what it can do for us,
Right.
especially in terms of, feeling financially secure and safe.
Absolutely. And I think that shift in perspective is really driving some of the interesting trends that we're seeing in the insurance industry these days,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
especially with companies like Good Rates Insurance.
Yeah.
They're taking a much more personalized approach to home insurance now.
Yeah.
They go way beyond just the basic coverage.
Right. And speaking of good rates, we were actually just looking at their website earlier, and I was really impressed with all the different things they cover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like you've got the essentials, obviously, right? Like fire damage, personal property, liability.
Right. And all of those are essential for a reason.
Yeah.
Even though technically home insurance isn't legally required in Canada,
Right.
most mortgage lenders won't actually give you a loan without it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they want to make sure that their investment is protected too.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But what I found really interesting is that Good Rates goes beyond just those basics.
Okay, like what?
They offer coverage for things like jewelry and collectibles, flood insurance, even wine collections.
Really? Wine collections.
That's pretty cool. It really speaks to this idea that our homes are a lot more than just, bricks and mortar.
Oh,
They
yeah.
hold our memories and our passions and all sorts of things that are totally irreplaceable.
Exactly. And a lot of those things have, serious financial value,
Yeah,
but also sentimental value.
for sure.
So, if you've got a vintage guitar collection or your grandmother's antique jewelry or something like that,
Yeah,
your basic standard insurance policy might not actually cover the full value of all that stuff.
that's so true. That's why it's really important to, get a personalized quote from an insurance broker,
Yeah.
because they can actually help you assess, your specific risks and explain all the different options to you.
Right.
And then you can make sure you actually have the right protection in place without paying for a bunch of stuff that you don't need.
It's like a tailored suit, but for your house.
Exactly. I love that analogy. And speaking of specific risks, we were talking earlier about all these extreme weather events.
Yeah.
And, it seems like flood insurance especially is becoming less of a nice to have and more of a must have
Yeah, for sure.
for a lot of people in Canada.
Absolutely. And that actually raises a really important question for our listeners.
Okay.
Do you know if your current policy covers flood damage?
Ooh, good question.
Because a lot of standard policies only cover flooding from things like, burst pipes inside your house. But they don't cover overland flooding, which is becoming way more common these days.
Right.
So that's a really critical detail to be aware of.
Yeah. You could think you're totally covered
Yeah.
and then have this really rude awakening if something happens.
Exactly. And that's where having a company like Good Rates that really specializes in these really specific types of coverage can be so valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
It goes back to that idea of, personalized protection.
Right.
Insurance is really becoming much more about understanding the individual homeowner and what matters most to them.
Absolutely.
Uh,
I have to admit, when I was looking at their website and saw that Good Rates actually offers coverage for wine collections, I kind of chuckled to myself.
I can see why.
But then I was like, wait a minute. If you're someone who's really into wine, that could be a total game changer.
Right.
Like, imagine that peace of mind, knowing that even if your basement floods, you're still going to be able to enjoy that special bottle of Cabernet that you've been saving.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about.
Right.
Having that peace of mind and knowing that you're protected no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Insurance can really play such a huge role in, in that feeling of security, both financially and emotionally.
It's true. When you feel secure,
Yeah.
you can focus on the things that really matter,
Absolutely.
like spending time with your family or pursuing your hobbies or just enjoying life without constantly worrying about what if.
Right. And that's where this whole conversation about insurance becomes so much bigger than just, policies and premiums.
Right.
It's really about taking control of your future and making sure that you've got the resources you need to weather any storm, literally and figuratively.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Everything from like the hard data about financial resilience
Right.
to, the more personal stuff, like what it actually means to feel secure and protected.
Right.
It's pretty clear that the whole insurance landscape is changing.
It really is.
And I think it's more important than ever for Canadians to be really informed and really proactive.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what? I think one of the key takeaways for our listeners today is this.
Yep.
Don't just assume that you're covered.
Yeah.
You really need to take the time to understand, your current insurance policy, like
Yeah.
what it includes and what it doesn't include.
Right, like we were saying earlier about flood insurance.
Yeah,
You might be surprised to learn that your policy actually doesn't cover the types of flooding that are becoming more and more common these days.
exactly. And that's why, having a conversation with a knowledgeable insurance broker can be so helpful.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They can walk you through all the different options and
Yeah.
explain all that fine print,
Yeah.
and then really help you customize a policy that fits, your needs and your risk profile.
And it seems like companies like Good Rates are really embracing that, that personalized approach to insurance.
They are. And it's really encouraging to see,
Yeah.
they seem to really understand that people's lives and needs are different,
Yeah.
and that one-size-fits-all approach to insurance just doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to end on.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has really highlighted just how important it is not just to have insurance, but to have the right insurance.
Couldn't agree more. And the only way to know for sure is to take that first step.
Okay.
Reach out to a company like Good Rates.
Yeah. Get a personalized quote, and then you can have that, peace of mind that comes with knowing you're protected.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. And when it comes to your financial well-being, understanding your insurance options is so important. So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay resilient.